we just want to say thank you, everyone, for coming. You're probably sitting thinking, going, wills and trusts. This is really going to be what an exciting topic. At the same time, some of the stories and some of the illustrations, I would just say that this is probably one of the most exciting topics and opportunities we have right now to have this discussion over wills and trusts. Super excited about it. You're thinking I'm nuts, but trust me, I think through this time, we're going to be able to see some incredible things that we can do as ministries, as organizations, nonprofits, to bless the lives of others and to empower our ministries and organizations at a whole nother level because of what's going on. And we'll share a few stories, and it's just going to be a real interactive time. And so right now, I would just like to say thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time. We want to honor your time. And so I would also like to invite Andy White, Pastor Andy White here in town with Legacy Christian Church, a friend of mine, partner of ours, and he's going to be praying and opening our time together. So thank you. All right.
Well, Father, we come before you as shepherds and stewards of kingdom things. Lord, this room is filled with kingdom-minded people who carry around in their hearts the desires of the King and the things that you've called us to do. And they're kingdom things that are bigger than us, and they require resources that are greater than ours. And so, Father, we're looking for you to provide all of our needs according to your riches and glory. Lord, we confess our dependence upon you to be the one who provides those things. And we're thankful for 10 Talents that helps open up the doors for those resources to flow into those kingdom things. We pray, God, that you would be on this time, that connections would be made, that our fears and the things that keep us from asking and putting out the needs that you would help us, Lord, as we wrestle these things and think about them. We pray that you would be on our speakers, that you would anoint them to help us, Lord, to do the kingdom work that you've called us to do. Lord, thank you for this time. We pray that it would be a blessing to you in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you. Hey guys, thanks for coming. I'm super excited to see all of you here. My name is Chanel. I think I've met most of you. I'm going to introduce our team real quickly. I think you guys all know Brent. He's the CEO of 10 Talents. And Dan Kimball over there, he's our COO, waving his hand around. Cheryl is community relations and outreach. She keeps things going. And then Mark Peterson does community engagement. There's one. There he goes. And we have a lot that we're trying to pack into 2 hours, so I'm going to be really brief, but I want to just give you guys an overview of what to expect out of this meeting. So you all have a folder in front of you, and there is an agenda in that folder. Basically, the breakdown, we're going to be having our first guest speaker before lunch. We're going to break for lunch briefly, and then we'll have our second speaker in session afterwards. There is also in your folder, you're going to find a page to take notes. We really encourage you guys to do that because writing things down, if you brought a tablet or something else to take notes on, that's totally cool too. But writing things down really helps with remembering it. And then there's resources about bequests and wills and trusts that we're going to go over in the workshop also. Also in that folder is a contact list, which has the names of all of our ministry partners. So we've had people ask for that before, so that you can get in contact with people if you want to, and if you make any connections today. So what we're going to actually start out with is just some questions. And I would say if you're sitting at a table and there is not somebody else around you that is not from your organization, go ahead and bunch up a little bit. We put out seats for everyone who had RSVP'd, and I think a few more people are still going to be trickling in. But we want to start out with just a time of discussion to get your own minds thinking about our topics and prepare us for what our speakers are going to present today. So we'll give about 5 minutes to do that. And then when this time is over, there's going to be a video that comes up on the screen, and that will end discussion time. So we've got 3 questions here for you guys to talk about. Introduce yourself to a couple people around you. And we'll be back in like 5 minutes.
What would it be like if we had a Christian community foundation in the Central California region that not only served our generous families, but united them together for the purpose of leveraging their resources for greater impact into the ministries, churches, and organizations that they all love to give to? This is the mission of the 10 Talents Foundation.
10 Talents came to us at a time when I was getting overwhelmed with the amount of giving and the amount of requests and the amount of different organizations that I was a part of. And we've always tried to stay really connected with our community. And we decided years ago that we really wanted to be kingdom-minded, and we wanted our business to just be a reflection of God's stewardship. And so we wanted to give from our business. So I've always had that vision. But when 10 Talents came along, it enlarged that vision. It enlarged the vision in my community. It gave me partners that I could talk to, like, hey, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about this organization? What do you think God is doing here? What are some things that you know that God is doing? And it just enlarged that vision for our community and for the things that we're doing.
We like the idea of a local ministry-focused foundation. 10 Talents provided a forum for us to see local ministries that have been vetted and our giving can have the greatest impact. And I've been inspired to be more generous because of 10 Talents for a couple reasons. One of them is the tax savings we've had from our crop gifting account. Before, our tax planning was not as efficient. 10 Talents explained to me how it was more efficient to not receive the income from that crop that we were gifting. And less income, less taxes. Therefore, overall, we were able to give more to ministries through this process.
Generosity is something that is learned. And wouldn't it be awesome if we could teach our kids and our grandchildren how to give? Here's this money that's available and you get this much of it, but you have to pick a worthy project. We can take them to South and West Fresno and look at the homeless situation. We can take them to the mission and see people that are really in need. This is better than a good idea, and it's going to make a big difference. Plus, you know what else it does that's so awesome is that it brings everybody together. Everybody is a part of this. And so when we saw their vision and we saw what they were trying to do, it gave us goosebumps, you know, that this is God's work. This is what it's all about.
"10% of what people own is in cash. 90% of what they own is in non-cash assets, like crops, homes, business interests, appreciated stock, land. And we can turn those things into greater kingdom impact all throughout this region and around the world. We would love for you to join us at the 10 Talents Foundation. Awesome. Thank you guys again for being here. So, Walter, I get a phone call from a business leader up in Davis. He's a plumber. And he says, Brent, I've got a guy that works for me that's been a part of the company for a long time. And he's in the process of considering his trust or doing something in the way of his will. When you come up and visit with us, he's not really philanthropic, but would you come and meet with us? So I put it on my calendar, I headed up to Davis, and I had never met Walter before, never spent time with him at all. But we go into this conversation, and And I said, Walter, it's very nice to meet you. He's an older gentleman. And he says, yeah, it's great to meet you too, because I've been thinking about things and I don't really have a plan. I really don't know what I'm doing in the way of my estate plan. But I just wanted to have a conversation with you a little bit about maybe some of my intentions and some of the things that I kind of want to do. So we dive into this conversation, and I said, do you know much about Convoy of Hope? I mean, your boss has done a lot and with Convoy, but he goes, no, not really. And so asking him more questions, getting to know him, spending time, finding out his heart, finding out what he's about, finding out his heartbeat of what's going on, I find out that he's an international shipper. And what he's done all his life, this is kind of his retirement job, was working at this plumbing company because he wanted to hang out with his friend, but he's an international shipper. He says, I can get anything shipped anywhere, anytime, whenever you need. Convoy may be able to be open to something like that. And I said, Convoy's, so I did my research and did what I needed to do and followed up with him. But on that day, in our conversation, we talk about Convoy a little bit. And I said, what are you planning to do with some of the charitable giving or some of the things that you want to do in your trust? And he goes, I really have no plan. I don't know. I said, well, Convoy would be one of those that you may want to consider, And so I said, but what I would encourage you to do is maybe do a little more research. But I would love to ask you one thing. Would you be open to considering putting Convoy of Hope in your trust? And you can think about that, and then we can talk more. Can I follow up with you? And so on that day, he says, yeah, I'll consider that. And we start talking through, and I said, but do your research. Let's talk in a month. So we talked a month later, and he goes, Brent, I went ahead and included Convoy of Hope in my trust. So about 8 months ago, I received a call from Convoy of Hope. I worked for Convoy of Hope for 8.5 years. I had a lot of those type of conversations. but they called me about 8 months ago, and they said, Brent, tell us about Walter. I said, I had one meeting with Walter. What happened? And they said, well, we just want you to know that Walter ended up leaving $300,000 to Convoy of Hope. And so thank you for your work. Well done. Another gal in the area that Lanier and I have been very close with through the years, and Lanier Thomas is here along with Steve Spriggs. And both these guys are very good friends of mine. They've both been mentors of mine through the years. And we've had some incredible conversations. Steve and I have had some crazy things that we've dealt with in the past. I mean, really wild stuff that we probably won't get into here. But Lanier and I, in this one meeting, I did the same thing. In fact, this one lady who was 80 years old at the time, I asked her one question. I said, I know that you're involved in a lot of different boards or a lot of different ministries you're involved in. My encouragement to you for the last, let's just say 10 years of your life, what do you really want to focus on? And if that means cutting Convoy out of those plans, that's fine. But what would you really want to focus your time on in the next 10 years? She ended up pulling out of her monthly giving with Convoy of Hope. But in my conversations with her, I asked her that one question. I says, and this is another important question, when is the next time you're going to be updating your trust? And she goes, oh, well, we're planning to meet in 3 or 4 weeks. I said, would you do one thing? Would you consider adding Convoy of Hope to your trust as a beneficiary? And she says, yeah, I'd love to do that. That lady ended up leaving, I think, 10 or 12 different organizations, maybe more. Was it about that? Yeah, 10 or 12 organizations in her trust, with $50,000 each going to each of those ministries. And some of you in the room received some of those gifts. A part of it, she also included some other plans that needed to be happening through her trust. And another organization in the room received some of that. And so the simple questions that we need to ask, two of you in the room, I've asked the question of just recently. Are you planning to leave your organization in your trust or your will? One needs to do that. The other said, my attorney never even talked about that. So Lanier, you need to respond to that kind of question, when you're sitting here going, that my attorney didn't even ask me that question. So that's a note to you, please ask the question. But how many times are we asking that? It's so exciting because I want to ask one question of you right now. How many of you have lost a loved one in the past year that you know about? It's a friend of yours? I mean, raise of hand. How many of you have lost a loved one in the last year or even the last 2 years? Many of us have. We've connected with different people. And so it's such a perfect opportunity to not, we all get weird on this topic, right? We go, man, if I'm going to ask somebody like that, feels like self-serving. It feels a little greedy. On the other hand, what it gives us the ability to do in asking that question is really living out the legacy of the people that care about our ministry so much. And if we're not asking them those type of questions to be able to step into their shoes and live out their legacies, because they've been giving to us, they've been supporting us through the years, they've been making that effort to include us in some of what's going on in their giving and their generosity, what perfect opportunity would it be for us to be able to step in their shoes and say, would you be willing to include our organization in your will or in your trust? Because it gives us the opportunity to live out your legacy. Now, some of those people may say, well, I've had some of these conversations in the past. I don't know if I want to do that. Or can I make the gift, but I don't want it to be irrevocable. And when I say irrevocable, it's putting something in trust that can't be changed. Our mission is to help people make gifts that can be changed, but our mission is to help them make gifts to organizations, because some of these people that we've talked to in this valley have made gifts to organizations that they can't get out of, and the organization has gone liberal or has gone in a different direction than their intentions were. And so some of them feel stuck. Our mission is to help people give and be generous. And if the 10 Talents Foundation has that opportunity to help them, our 10 Talents Foundation doesn't have structured tools that people can't change. Our mission is to have everything as flexible as possible so people can do what they want to do with instruction. And so the power of this time together is really to be able to say, who are the people that we know? When we walk into a banquet, the craziest thing for me is when we walk into a banquet and I see that 60-70% of the people in the room are older. They've lost loved ones. We're losing them left and right now. And they're people that we love and care about. So what greater opportunity is it for us as ministry people to come together to focus on helping people make significant gifts and living out their trust. Living out their legacy through their wills and trusts. So thank you for thinking through this with us, and we're going to be empowering some of that as we continue. So right now, I just want to say to Lanier Thomas as he comes up, Lanier Thomas is an estate planning attorney here in the Valley, has been for years, has a lot of experience. I've had the opportunity to work with him in many different capacities. He's worked with a lot of high net worth families and families that are middle of the road families, but has done some incredible work, has done a lot of charitable work in his life, has worked with Steve Spriggs a lot through his life, and has an amazing family. And so Lanier, thank you for being a mentor to me and supporting our Valley in so many incredible ways by helping people be generous and giving to their trusts and their wills. And so Lanier, come on up and share with us a little more about what's going on in this area. So thank you.
Am I on? Okay. One of the things that I think you'll see come through the foundation, and Brent and I have talked about this a lot, and even through this whole topic of estate planning and planned giving, is the idea of an abundance versus a scarcity mentality. And we're all about abundance. It's not if you get something, then there's less for us. No, it's we want to create abundance. We want to give you the tools so that you can go out and talk to your donors, talk to the people on your boards, and be able to grow the pie and make it bigger. So you'll see that whole philosophy in the foundation, and even in this, what we're going to talk about for a few minutes here about estate planning and planned giving. So 3 things I want to chat with you about. One is the psychology that we see as attorneys of people coming into us for estate planning. Also some of the psychology of the charitable giving, so mindset. The second thing is what's best practices from my point of view. This is my 44th year of doing this. And so we've seen success, we've seen failures, we want to do plans that work. And so I want to share with you how basic estate planning works, why we do it the way we do it, and at least equip you with some of the terminology, some of the concepts, so that if you're talking to a donor about a trust or funding a trust or beneficiary designations, you have some idea of what's going on with that from the attorney's standpoint. And then third, I want to talk about your role as advisors and not being embarrassed about asking these questions. And I want to share a story with you of a funeral I was just at on Friday. It'll probably be the single largest. It's not in this part. It's not in Fresno County. It's another county, but probably the single largest gift to evangelical Christian I've ever seen out of an estate. So it's really kind of an amazing story, and has been about an 8 or 9 year journey. And so I want to use that sort of buttress some of the things that we're going to talk about. The psychology when people come to see us, I think, by and large, because what we're dealing with is death and disability. Well, people don't like to talk about death and disability very much. I mean, I guess as they get older and they go to a few funerals and they realize it's coming, it's not a favorite topic. So people tend to hold their nose. They want to get it done cheaply, quickly as possible, not have to think about it. But that's not the best practice. That's not really what's going to make for a successful result for them. So we're trying to build a way of getting people into talking about their loved ones, their passions charitably, and get them to think about what are they going to pass on. And it's not just their stuff. You know, I don't pull out a sheet of paper, which I've seen attorneys do before, and go, okay, who do you want to leave your stuff to? Well, no, I don't think that works very well. We tend to find out, tell me about your family. Tell me about how you and your wife met. Tell me about your kids. What are the challenges that some of the kids are meeting? And we've seen it all. I mean, we have seen so many. We'd had a gentleman, a doctor here in town that had passed away, and his 3 kids are just tremendous, all highly educated, all just, making everybody proud. We've seen drug situations. But if you don't ask those questions and you don't do the counseling portion of it, you're not going to be able to do a very good job. So that's kind of what we're about. And in your world, as far as the psychology goes, you've got a lot of people that are checkbook philanthropists. They'll write a check. Well, okay, that's great. Writing a check's a good thing. But the reality is only 7% of people's assets, by and large, is available to the checkbook. It's tied up in real estate, it's tied up in businesses, it's tied up in all kinds of things. So that's from a Bank of America study. That's 7%. You don't want to be fighting over just the cash. Not fighting over, but looking for just the cash gifts. You want to be saying, okay, well, we've got this vacant lot that's over here next to Valley Children's Hospital. What would you like to do with that? And sometimes charity's perfect for that. Charity can sell it, not pay any capital gains on it. You might get an income tax deduction, but it's out of your estate. Those odd, difficult gifts. And sometimes it's when somebody's selling a business. How can you participate in that sale of the business? Give somebody an income tax deduction. And later on in our discussion, probably with Steve, I can talk about a charitable remainder trust that we did last year with a guy that was getting out of his business. Really fascinating tax consequences with that. But what we faced in our business is a kind of a commoditization of estate planning. People understand, I think after the 30 or 40 years I've been in business, they get it. I need a trust. Why do they need a trust? Everybody knows they need a trust. Their instincts are right. They may not quite know why. The deal is when you're disabled or you die and you can't sign a check, you can't sign a deed, somebody has to be able to do that. And that's basically what estate planning is. If you do nothing, well, the Superior Court of Fresno County has a probate division that will appoint a conservator if you're disabled or an executor if you're dead. And those people will be able to sign checks, sign deeds, do the work. But guess what? That's public. That's all on the public record. It's expensive. Frankly, I hate it. It's a bureaucratic nightmare. We just finished a probate estate. Took 3 years to get through. Had a business in it, all that. So people's instincts when they go, yeah, I know I need a trust. Well, that's why. We don't want the probate court involved. And all the probate clerks and the judge don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. So how do we get around that? And why is the trust effective? Why is that a good thing to do? A trust is legal in the United States to be able to short circuit that whole probate process. If you transfer the title of your assets, your house, your bank accounts into the name of the trust, then your successor trustee will be able to immediately sign on your behalf, sign deeds, transfer bank accounts, do whatever needs to be done without probate. It short circuits. But you've got to fund the trust. You have to change the title. One of my mentors explained it one time is when you're sitting there without the trust, it's like Allstate good hands people. The boat, the house, cars, ski-doos, everything in your hands. If you become disabled or if you die, you don't have control of your hands anymore. So those assets fall, they get scattered, the probate court comes along, scoops them up, hands them to the conservator or the executor. That's basically probate. A trust, on the other hand, if you can picture, when I was a kid, I had the little, the red wagon, I forget what the radio flyer, that's it. Mine was rusted the last time I saw it. It was toast. But yeah, we had that. And so instead of having the assets in your hands, you put them in the wagon. And as long as you can, you carry the handle with the wagon, and then your trust will dictate. If you're disabled, the handle to the wagon gets passed off to somebody else, and you avoid that probate process. That's what people are talking about when they know they need a trust. And so to be sensitive to that, I think is outstanding. You need to have that basic knowledge. Next piece of basic knowledge that you want to have is, how does all this fit together? Because when the clients leave our office, they have a binder. And this is after we've done the counseling, after we've found out about the kids, after we've found out about their passions, and we've designed something for them. They've got a set of documents. The foundation of it is a living trust. The living trust is that wagon that we're putting their stuff into. They're going to have a pour over will, but the action, where things are going to go, are all in the trust. It's not in the will. The will simply says, if I pass away, anything outside left outside my trust pours over to my trust. You're going to have a power of attorney. That's going to say somebody who's your agent, probably the same person as the trustee, is going to be able to sign tax returns. Going to be able to hire and fire caregivers. We'll be able to add things that are outside the trust. We just used that last week, where dad's passed away, mom's not doing well, daughter's got the power of attorney, and there was a stray $150,000 account. Daughter was able to use the power of attorney to move that asset into the trust where all the instructions are. And then we're going to typically do some advanced, like healthcare powers, and work through that whole end of life, those issues. So that's what the documents look like. You've done the counseling, you've done the documents. But the challenge that we face is that because of the commoditization of what we do, is that people view it as, oh, I just need the documents. I just need the trust. Well, I'm not in the business of selling documents. I sell wisdom. What I'm selling is my 40 years plus of seeing situations and helping to, fix broken kids, or at least keep them from breaking anymore, from being able to clean up charitable bequests, focusing on that. So we go through a process of education, kind of like what we're just having right now about estate planning, and what all the documents are, why they're there. We do the counseling process, and at the end, try to come up with solutions that work. Now, this is a process. People like to think it's a transaction. And, hey, I'm done. 14 years later, they pull that binder out if they can find it. Usually they're calling me as, I can't find the binder. Can you send me a PDF? And they look and they go, well, that's not going to work now. So it's a process. And I think that's part of where, and we'll talk more about it, but where you become involved is with getting people started into that process. You can help them with that. With a little bit of knowledge, you can get them pointed in the right direction, and you can remind them, have you reviewed your stuff? Are your charitable beneficiaries really the same that you wanted 15 years ago? And we've had several, I won't, it's just all kinds of charities, but we've seen, boy, they didn't stand tall when XYZ happened. I want them out of there. So a review, it's a process. It's not a transaction. It takes place over time. Does it have to be reviewed every 2 years? No. 5 years is probably smart. 10 to 15 years, stuff's getting a little old. So it is a process. In working with all of this too, don't forget beneficiary designations. The trust doesn't control the beneficiary designation on a life insurance policy, on retirement assets. And if you have somebody that has a $100,000 IRA, let's say, or a 401k like that, their kids are going to pay taxes on that. That used to be a stretch. They could stretch it out over their lifetime, and it was very comfortable for them. It's 10 years now. Why not give that IRA, that stray asset, to your favorite charity or charities and not have any income taxes paid on it? So as you become involved with your donors, your board members, and see some of those things, there's those opportunities if you can point them in the right direction. The other thing too, I thought I'd mention, just as I was kind of looking through some of my old notes on charitable giving, is the more involved your donors are with your organization, the more they give. It's statistical, it's proven out, it's in the B of A study. If they're on your board, if they're taking an active role, if they're participating, they're going to give more. So that's another thing that you can do, is helping people with their vision, showing them what you can do, showing them where you've been accountable. And that's part of what the foundation is about here, is helping you demonstrate that accountability to donors. Trust. They're going to give more. You're going to find more opportunities. So in your role, like I said, I think it's getting people into the right advisors and getting the work done right, and to move them from checkbook philanthropy into a true development, full-on philanthropy, where they're thinking about, what's my goal here? What can I really accomplish? What's it going to take to accomplish that goal? If I don't have enough, maybe I've got a friend that I know is interested in this, that I can bring in to help. The other challenge that I think we're seeing is with this commoditization of estate planning, is that there are there's a lot of technology out there. And you can go to trustinestates.com and you can do your stuff online. And Brent and I have discussed it. I'm not quite sure what to think, but there's some organizations that are selling online estate planning to charities, and charities subscribe to it, and they'll do the documents, and they'll keep the charity on board with what's going on with that client. And I've got some misgivings about that. Number one, who's going to do the counseling? Who's got the experience to do the counseling to deal with all that client situations? We really struggle with this because there is the expense involved with estate planning. It's not an inexpensive process. So does that make sense? I don't know. I've seen charities get involved in actually doing the estate planning, and I've seen them create train wrecks of charitable remainder trusts that were improperly done, improperly administered, and there's blowback, and the charities have to spend time cleaning them up. But those are on the larger side. But I would encourage you to develop relationships with attorneys in the community. Brent's got some. Talk to him. We're available. But I don't think the idea, I'm troubled by the online stuff, because you wouldn't hand somebody a mirror and a scalpel and say, good luck with your bypass. And when you just load somebody up with online stuff, and I haven't looked at it in great detail, I have to be honest, but I can't imagine going through the process and not having the wisdom and the background to be able to do a very good job of things. Also, possibility of conflicts of interest, just creating messes. And if you create a mess, that can be a blowback on your organization. And you don't want donor remorse. You don't want somebody to go through something and it not go well, and then it doesn't look good for the organization. We want to try to avoid that. I'll share a quick story. A family down in the South Valley, faithful Christians. I've been working with them since probably 2014, 2015. Both mom and dad have gone on to meet the Lord in the last year. I was kind of surprised they both went so quickly. But whenever we sat down, they had a laundry list of charities that was a mile long. And I said, okay, well, I don't know whether you're going to have an estate tax or not. It looks like they're going to have a little bit of an estate tax. It's probably a $25 million estate. But you could make these gifts now and take the income tax charitable deduction right now, because your income is kind of running 800,000 to $1 million, $1.1 million a year. You could use it now. Clean all this up. And they did. They talk about checkbook philanthropy. They got busy. And they took those deductions. I think they spread it over a couple of years or whatever. But now they're leaving. I won't get into the details of it, but it'll probably equate to a $6 to $7 million gift to 5 different organizations, a couple of colleges, couple of different evangelical programs. I can't even remember all that list yet. That's this week's work, is to go look at those. But it's amazing what can be done, and it just takes being proactive and being brave and with some foresight of getting people to think about these things and getting a glimpse of their vision and matching them up with the right advisors so that you can come up with a plan, you come up with a program that will honor God. I mean, I've had 2 funerals in 4 days. And the one yesterday was a cousin up in Sutter Creek, and she was a follower of Jesus. It was amazing. There were lives touched in that service that I was talking to, and just talking about, she was known as the soup lady and had run a Bible bookstore there in town, and it just really lived it out. And it's such a blessing for someone when they come to the end of the journey to have that sort of story, like the clients down there in the South Valley, to have had that impact and know that they've gone on before us, but they're waiting for us, and that they're going to have a lasting impact. So, anyway, be happy to take some questions, or Brent, you've got the schedule there. I'll let you.
Lanier, just real quick, like some of the things I'm thinking about right now is, one of them is just, we say beneficiary a lot, and for those of you that aren't in the space or in the financial space, beneficiary, like what is a beneficiary?
Well, it's who you've named to receive some of your estate. And so it can be a cash amount, it can be a percentage.
Yeah, there you go.
There's all kinds of ways to do that. It's a beneficiary is the same thing as when you're named as a beneficiary on a retirement plan.
Yeah.
So
it's naming someone.
Right. Who's going to receive?
And a lot of times, you as organizations, it's placing the name of the organization and also your tax ID number.
Yeah.
That's why all of our documents right now with 10 Talents Foundation, a lot of them, they even not be on them, but I think it's even on some of our letterhead, is our tax ID numbers on everything. Put your tax ID, make it simple for people by putting your tax ID number on everything. So that way when someone's sitting there going, hey, I want to make a gift, or I want to designate it, or they want to give through their donor advised fund, they're always going to be asking. I've had that question 100 times just in the last 2 months. What's the tax ID number?
Yeah.
Put it on everything you do. So you got that.
We appreciate it, because what happens at times when you have this list of charitable beneficiaries, you go, which one is it? I'm not, some of these names get kind of very similar. And if I've got a taxpayer ID number or an address, I usually will Google them and look this stuff up and put it into the trust document. That's a very good point. I'm glad you mentioned that.
It is, and that's just one thing that we can be putting the tax ID number to go
Yeah.
in. So when we're letting our donors know, hey, if you're going to be leaving us with our, as a beneficiary in your trust or in your will, please include the tax ID number, because that's going to route right back to you guys in a very clean way as you do that.
Yeah.
So other questions that some of you may have for, yes.
Has there been any pushback from family? You talk about, if you're going to talk to somebody about a trust, and you talk about doing your homework of talking to family, find out who they are. Is there any pushback from family to say, wait a minute, I'm not sure if I want this to happen, be given to FCA or anything? Are there any surprises that take place when somebody goes to be with the Lord to say, hey, wait a minute, who's this organization?
That's a great question. Repeat the question for a video.
Sure. The question is, have we seen some surprises when a certain charity is named? Not a lot, because most of the people where we've done this sort of planning for, the family is along. It just depends on if they live long enough, and then the kids are there, they're seeing the documents. I have seen some little percentage changes. Sometimes the kids look at it and go, well, I think mom really wanted more to go over here and a little bit more over there. And so, yeah, it can happen. It's not frequent, but the charities sometimes go, well, gee, I thought our percentage was 25% of what was going to the charities, and now it's 20, something like that. So what that brings up is this idea of a process and being involved with the donors and keeping that contact up. You're doing it for all the right reasons anyway, but then you would know. You don't want the surprise. You can say, well, if they took us out, they took us out. If they changed the percentage, okay, fine. Why? Maybe somebody in the family influenced them that shouldn't have happened. It happens. But you don't want to just write it down in your book. Yeah, okay, so-and-so's giving us 15%, and that be the end of it. You do want to go back every now and then and say, gosh, we really appreciate it. You thought about us. Is that still the case? What's the circumstances? Really good question.
May I have a follow-up question to that?
Yes.
So we've received a gift in the past where the children contacted us and said, it's not how we want to give it, even though it was in the trust. And so then the ministry has to make the decision on how they're going to politically handle that. Because legally, it's trust.
So if it's written down, is it so let it be written, so let it be
Well,
said?
pretty much. That's my attitude. But if somebody wants to, because we put our page-long no contest clause in there, anybody can complain about anything. Okay, it's a free country. They can sue. They can contest. We have to send state of California makes us send out a notice to all the beneficiaries. And you got 120 days to come along and contest. And so we do that, and we rarely, I'll get some squabbles, I'll get somebody calling me up, well, some complaints about it. And whenever I say, look, I looked at my notes, this is what mom wanted. That usually is the end of the conversation, because there is a page-long no contest clause. The courts don't like to enforce them, but if somebody complains, they run the risk of losing their inheritance.
So would it be advisable to, like when Rob gets that phone call, to go back and look at the documents
Yes.
and call the attorney?
You're entitled to a copy of the document. Absolutely.
Yeah, he receives that. Would he call the attorney and say, can
You
you just
could.
walk through this with me a
Right.
little bit just to
And
give me some
confirm
advice? I think that would be helpful, right?
And it's interesting when the family calls you direct.
Oh, I know.
It's, that's just,
I was going to say something though real
it
quick.
wasn't their call.
No,
exactly. It's not their
it's not their fault.
It's not their
very
fault.
relational.
It does. And
Yes.
These are long-term yuppers, right?
Yes.
This is found.
And I think the big piece to Pup, to your thought on that is many times I'm like, I would really encourage you to have a conversation with your kids about what your intentions are,
Absolutely.
because then I'm always moving that ball forward. I'm always saying, because what that does is it gives them the opportunity to actually go promote our organizations to their kids. But it's also informing them and keeping them informed on what's going on. I do that a lot. I'm always asking
I don't always
questions. So, yeah. Let's go ahead and wrap this.
Got it.
What we'll do is we'll try to squeeze you in, and then maybe do some Q&A at the end.
Sure.
In general, or I'll incorporate. I have a little panel we're going to do. A little corporate there. Just I want to
And
keep.
Steve and I'll be.
That will be helpful.
And if you've got other questions, Lanier's going to be spending time here for the next 8 hours. So you can just go for it. That'd be great.
All right.
So, Lanier, thank you so much. It's
my pleasure.
been awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all you do and the impact you've made. I made this one comment one time to Lanier. We left a memorial service, and I called him up right after the memorial service, and I said, Lanier, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for investing in our local families, for investing in the charitable side of what they do, because what you've done in the way of helping people do charitable work through the years, you don't know the power and the impact of what that is, but I'm just telling you it's significant.
Thank you.
And so thank you for the work that you've done for 44 years. I mean, I thought you were 29. So thank you, Lanier. I appreciate it. It's awesome. I'd like to introduce Ivana right now. Ivana, come on up here. Share a little bit about yourself. And this guy's providing lunch for us today. So that's awesome. So thank you for all you do. Thank you for being a partner with us. And there you go.
Well, thank you, Brent. So if you grab these flyers, it was on your table. Hope Now is not a new organization. We've been around for a while, but I definitely needed Hope Now back in 1992 when I walked into a Burger King on Maple and Kings Canyon, and I failed a interview very badly. Timing is everything. I probably would have got a job at a fast food restaurant nowadays, right? They're just so understaffed. But back then, I didn't know what to do. And back then, I was a gang member trying to find a way to make some money. They said no, and so, not that they're responsible, I kind of gave up and went back to the streets to robbing and stealing. So Hope Now was created for gang members. We are gangs to jobs, jails to jobs, and high school dropouts to jobs. So not only am I the director since March of 2021, but I was also a client. And not only am I also a client and a director, you got Oscar Rodriguez, gang member, prison, the whole 9 yards, and he's the founder and executive director of Martin Park, but he is also our board member, one of the board members here. And so I just want to recognize Trevor and Franklin, board members.
I don't know if I'm feeling safe right now or scared.
Well, just make sure you hide your stuff. Don't be scared of me. Be scared of the guy that was serving last. Anyway, or maybe the lawyers right around. Yeah, I think that's quick after it starts. That's why we have a lawyer on our phone. Well, you get you coming, get you going, that's right. And so what Hope Now has done, we started a street food, basically a food truck. And it's basically, as you can see, it's parties, events, and customized. And the word customized is what's happening today. We have Mexican food, and we have some Asian food. So you can kind of customize the menu to what you like. If it can be made, we can figure it out. And so that's what we're doing. As you can see, these guys that are here today, here's Richard. He's a Hope Now graduate, and he works part-time at Hope Now. That's Matthew Brewster. He was our feature story in the month of August. And this is Alfredo, homeless, came to Hope Now, was sleeping in his car, and as you can see, he's cleaning carpets. He just got a job at JPL on board. So that's what Hope Now is doing, carpets, floors, and surface, but more than anything, it's job training. That's what I needed 32 years ago, and I got that after 8 years in prison. I got out, and again, Hope Now is just Oscar and myself, former enemies on the streets, and now we're like doing things for the kingdom. And so we're grateful to be here. We're grateful to be able to feed you. And again, Brent, 10 Town Foundation, thank you for this. And we will pray for the food. So God, thank you again for the opportunity to share what Hope Now is doing with the food truck, with the carpet cleaning company. God, thank you so much that this is really all you. And not only is this all you, 10 Talents Foundation now was formed, and through the vision of the heart of Brent and the board members. God, thank you for them. And thank you for the food as we're about to receive it. Bless it, nourish it to our bodies. And Lord, bless the conversations that we're going to have with all the things that matter to your kingdom. In your name we pray. All God people say, amen.
Amen. I'm gonna follow it up real quick. You guys are just gonna go out this door. The food truck's out there. All the food's on a table. There's two choices. You can get the Mexican beans and rice, a carne asada, or there's an Asian egg roll with rice. So grab one, and then we're gonna have to come back in here and sit down and eat so we can get to the next part of our workshop. So you guys can keep it to 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
We love the convo. We hate to end it, but we really want to try to be mindful of your guys' time. First thing I want to do is recognize if you are a board member of a nonprofit represented here, could you just kind of raise your hand? It's awesome. I just want to say thank you guys for taking time to be here. It means a lot to see nonprofit board members kind of take that extra step. So thank you. At this point, I'm going to have my name is Dan Kimball. I work with Brent, 10 Talents, and been in the nonprofit space for many years. I've had the opportunity to be part of organizations that have seen Playing Gifts come in, and been part of that conversation. It's been a pleasure. 10 years of my life, I worked at Fresno State, and early in my term there, my sentence, I met Steve Spriggs, our next speaker, and it's really interesting. Steve brings a different set of eyes to this. Steve is a lawyer by trade, but he left that space to actually become a nonprofit representative and working with people in the Playing Even space on the other side. And he's become a really, really good friend. I left in 2015. Steve and I continued to hang out and tell war stories and solve life's problems. But what's really unique about Steve is his ability to connect with people. And that was one of the reasons why he came to mind when we put together this particular workshop, is that Steve just wasn't I'm going to go out and ask people to give them their states. I mean, he has become personal friends with donors. I mean, he knows donors' dogs' birthdays. He fishes with some of these folks and still does. And I love this guy, and I think you're gonna be really pleased to hear a different side than Lanier. It's just different. It's a different view. So welcome, my friend Steve Spriggs.
Thank you, Dan.
That wasn't too hard on you, was that?
You were pretty nice.
Yeah.
He could have done so much better. I'm going to say, just to start with, I'm really happy to be here. I'm happy people are willing to even consider talking about Playing Gifts, because it is a very negative thing. And my goal in my position as director of Playing Giving at Fresno State, I did that for quite some time, and then I retired. Retirement's better, by the way. It is very, very important to understand that making the ask, everybody's afraid to ask for these, will you put us in your will? It's a scary thing to ask. I'm going to tell you a couple of stories here. The first one, you need to focus on what your need is. And if your need is life-changing, if the need, as I say, will change the world, then you stand a really good chance of convincing people to give to fulfill that need. There was a need for athletic scholarships for the tennis team. I was referred to a nice 82-year-old woman, and I will go on forever if I don't follow my notes, so bear with me. Nice 82-year-old woman. She was widowed, no kids. She was a retired university tennis coach. I met her at a football game. We were in the skybox, and we were both bored to death. The game was horrible. People were horrible. It was just a bad place to be. And so the two of us sat in the corner, and we talked through the whole second half. We got to know each other. We occasionally chatted by phone for the next 2 years. I invited her to join me in the front row seats at the annual tennis tournament on campus. We had a nice outing. It was nothing remarkable. 2 months later, I offered to drive her to the awards banquet where the students were being awarded. It was the awards banquet for the athletics at Fresno State. By chance, we sat next to a student athlete. And this student athlete had made a tennis team because of a life-changing scholarship that had been left, that she was able to, that allowed her to go to college. On the way home, she asked me how somebody might establish a tennis scholarship for a low-income student. Now, I didn't ask, she asked. She was exposed to somebody who benefited by that. I was in a position to help coordinate that, and she asked me. We discussed the possibilities for over 2 years. Kept in touch, she had more questions, had things to offer. One day she called, she said, "I'm ready." We got together, she funded a full scholarship for the next school year, and she arranged to leave the remainder of her estate to fund a permanent endowment for scholarships for tennis students, students who play tennis on the sport. We became very good friends. I made sure that she was able to meet the first student that was funded by her gift, and it was just magic. You put a student together with a donor that made the student's career possible, and it is just a special place to be. Before her death, I visited her in the hospital. She had explained to me how our gift was one of the best things that she had ever done. She thanked me profusely for helping her find such joy. So, you know, what I did was a job, but it was the best job in the world because I was putting people together with their goals in life, and they were thanking me for it, something I never expected. She ended up leaving a $3.5 million gift that continues to fund a full ride for a tennis scholarship every year. Now, the takeaways from this, I want you to think about. If you've identified the person's passion, hers was tennis, I knew that. If you've matched their passion to a real need within your organization, we needed scholarships. If you know them well enough to avoid bad timing when you're presenting your need, you got to know their family situation. If they've had a death, if their dog's sick, there's just times that you don't want to bring these things up. And if you presented your need to them with a sincere enthusiasm and an understanding as to how their gift would actually change the world, for one person or for everybody, it doesn't matter. If it's going to change the world, if you've done all those things, then you may never have to make that scary ask, because they're going to approach you and say, how can I meet that need? So that's the takeaway from the first story I wanted to share with you. And I want to just interrupt. The question that the gentleman in the back asked about blowback from these gifts. I was the guy at the university who got the phone call. Hello, you SOB. You talked my mother into giving all of our money to the university? Which we'll get into another story here, how that works out. But yeah, I was that guy. And yeah, there is a lot of blowback when people don't discuss with their family what their plans are. So the second story, this is a story I call my son's an addict story. The need that we had here was funds for equipment for a new engineering building. Engineering department needed stuff. I met a 78-year-old man. He was widowed, had one adult son. He was a retired engineering professor. Again, the connection with his, I assumed, passion. Got to know him. I invited him for lunch, but he wanted to meet for drinks. He was a drinker. For 18 months, we spoke by phone. We got together occasionally, and we drank. I met him in his place. That's where he was. I invited him to a football game. At the football game, he drank too many beers. So I drove him home. And the next day, I helped him retrieve his car back at the stadium. He asked how the engineering project was going, and we talked for 2 hours, mostly about our families, but I interspersed the needs within the engineering department for their new building. A week later, he called me and said he wanted to talk. And I said, are we going to meet at the bar? He said, no, meet me at my home. That was different. We sat down, and there were no drinks, and he said, I want you to know that I trust you, and I want to tell you something. And he shared that his adult son was a cocaine addict, seriously at the bottom of the barrel. Said that his life savings would just go up his son's nose if he left all the money to his son. So he asked me if there was a way to I could help him set up some kind of a fund to take care of his son when he was gone. And I said, well, there's a thing called a special needs trust. And, I can put you together with a lawyer who can help you with this. He wanted help setting this up. He didn't know what he wanted, but he wanted some way to care for his son with the rest going to the engineering department. So I worked with his lawyer. We set up a private trustee and a special needs trust to care for his son. But the interesting part was it was never needed. Over the next couple of years, he had supported his son through a rehabilitation program, and in 2017, he amended his trust to take the special needs trust out because his son was still sober, was functioning very well, had gotten married, and was really, and this gentleman who at that time was in his 80s had tears in his eyes, and he was able to tell me that we need to change the trust because my son's going to be okay. Well, upon his death in 2019, his son received $1 million, and the remaining $3.8 million was split between 3 different university engineering programs. I was asked by his son to speak at his funeral. And his son remains sober to this day. He's married and sends me a Christmas card every year. We keep in touch. So the takeaway here, it's an interesting story. It's a long story. I really shortened it up. But estate gifts are not transactional. These aren't things you send out a postcard and say, we want you to put us in your will. These things are relational. You have to you have to know the people. You have to build a relationship with them. Invest the time necessary to know them and for them to know you. Because if they don't trust you, you're never going to know how to overcome their concerns. This guy had a big concern. He didn't know how to overcome it, and it worked out for everybody. So that's the takeaway on this one. You got to spend the time. Assume that it's a long-term ask. It's not just a quick, hi, I'm Steve. You want to put us in your will? It doesn't work that way. My last story, and I'm going to try to hurry because I know we're behind here on time. Securing an estate gift commitment can be really complicated. And, you know, I've worked with Lanier, and they're not always simple. Here's a study, there was a need for funding for the deaf studies program on campus. I was introduced to a really sweet couple. He had been deaf since birth, and her adult daughter was deaf. And I was lucky that he read lips because I don't know sign language. For 4 years, we visited when they came to Fresno, and I stopped by their home in Los Angeles whenever I was in the area, 3 or 4 times during that time. My wife and I became very good friends with both of them. We're still very good friends with both of them. We regularly discussed the needs of people with hearing impairments. They knew I was a fundraiser, and one day they asked me why I hadn't asked them for a donation. I explained that I didn't think the timing was right because they had family concerns that I was aware of, and I just didn't think it was a good time to ask. The next week, they asked me to meet with their lawyer. I went down to Los Angeles. They wanted to make an immediate gift of stock shares and to leave the majority of their estate to the Deaf Studies program, but there was a big problem. And the problem was, it wasn't a problem that their accountant said they needed to make the gifts. Their attorney was ready to do the paperwork. They were afraid of how their kids were going to react when they learned that they were going to be getting nothing. And it was both of them would break into tears when they would explain to me their fear as to what would happen if they did what they wanted to do. Their kids were successful. Their grandkids were doing fine. They really didn't need the money, but they were scared to death to leave a gift because there's an assumption in most families that I'm going to get mom and dad's stuff. I helped them for a period of a long time. I helped them articulate a letter that they could leave with their will to explain to their kids. I said, just don't leave them with the questions. It's not fair to them. They're going to assume the worst. So if you don't want to confront them while you're alive, let's help get this letter, put it with your will. The kids will at least know why you did what you did. They decided after we spent months working on this letter, it was like working on a contract for a big corporation. They called me one day and said, you know, we've decided that we're just going to tell our families in person. But there was a catch. They wanted me to tell their kids. So I was invited to a Christmas family meeting at their home in Los Angeles. I led a discussion with the family, and it was a big family, and it was about this size of a group, and I explained how a gift could change the world for hearing impaired people throughout the Central Valley, and that their parents were really interested in doing something to help the deaf people in the Central Valley. In front of 23 kids, grandkids, and great-grandkids, they announced their plans to make the gift. And I sat back waiting for stuff to be thrown. And it surprised me, it surprised them. Their kids, there were 4 children and a bunch of grandkids, all came up, gave them hugs and kisses and said, "We love what you're doing. It's a wonderful thing. You're going to help other people." Surprised them, really surprised them. The kids said basically, "We're proud of you." And I can tell you there were a lot of hugs and there were a lot of tears. So, a $1 million cash gift was made at that time, and they expect that they're going to be leaving at least $5 million that's going to go to the program upon their deaths. We're very close friends. We visit regularly. They always shower me with appreciation for helping them achieve their dream. So again, I'm the selfish guy who gets all the kudos for helping them do what they wanted to do anyway. So there's people around you that can help pull these things together. I rely upon their lawyers, I rely upon their accountants, I rely upon them to be sure that their families are aware of what they're doing, because it is a big, big piece. The takeaways on this: don't be afraid. You don't need to know everything. This stuff about planned giving is really complicated. It's big terms. I went to law school. I'm not a lawyer, by the way. I have to have that disclaimer. I got my doctorate in law, but I never became a lawyer. But rely upon 10 Talents to be your technical expert. They're going to walk with you. If you find somebody in your organization that you want to talk to about this, rely upon these guys. If they don't know the answers, they're going to put you in front of somebody that's going to help you with the answers. The donor's concerns may not be clear unless you prompt them to explain further. It took years for me to get them to really explain to me what the problem was. Always offer to help them overcome their concerns, be flexible, and be willing to go above and beyond. So that's the tie-in that I put to this story. I'm going to have a couple bonus takeaways if I got them. We got time?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. A simple way to begin a giving conversation is to make a simple question. What's the best charitable gift that you have made? I've asked people on airplanes, what do you do for a living? I'm a fundraiser. I raise charitable funds for nonprofits. And we start talking, and I ask them, what's the best gift you ever made? What was the one that meant the most to you? And they tell me, and I go, wow, that must make you feel great. Tell me more about it. And the conversation takes its own place. You don't have to be afraid of opening a conversation that way. It'll take you in a conversation to places you never imagined. But be patient, be their friend, get to know them. I had the best job in the world. The people that I dealt with who left gifts and are leaving gifts, in my opinion, I have to become a good close friend before I'm comfortable asking them for the gift, before I can help them negotiate where they're going to leave the gift and how they're going to make it happen. The other thing that I want to be sure that you know is that once you know that they put the gift in their will, you're not done. You got to keep loving them. You got to keep reminding them that their gift is going to make a difference. It's going to change the world, because they're going to change their mind. They're going to be 84 years old in a rest home, and somebody's taking care of them, and they're going to love the nice caregiver and say, I think I'm going to change my will and leave you in my will. Things happen at the end of life where people change their minds. If you are in the front of their mind when they're thinking of these things, they're going to be reminded why they left the gift in the first place. So remember, it's a lifelong commitment. I am no longer a part of the organization I was raising money for, but I'm a part of all these people's families. It's an amazing place to be, and you'll find it'll make you closer to the individuals. They will become closer to your organization, and great things will come of it. Have I been stiffed? Yeah. I've read in the paper that so-and-so died, and I was mentioning to a gentleman at the table that I have a very difficult time internally, morally, because I go, whoa, the money's coming now. They died. I've succeeded. Wow, it's a great success as a fundraiser. At the same time, I'm grieving the fact that I lost a good friend. We lost a good person on this earth. And just be prepared for that because it'll catch you off guard. You got to be careful. And I worked with a gentleman who wasn't real classy, and in front of family, he was just going on and on about how happy he was that their dad had died because the gift was coming their way. And I guarantee you, those kids aren't going to leave a gift, and they're not going to feel good about the gift that their parents left. So just, be smart about it, be sincere. We're all human. Got to treat them as humans. Those are my 3 stories, and those are the takeaways. Anybody have any quick questions? Thanks. Oh, go ahead.
Those relationships, the ones that you were able to build lifelong friendships with, did they come to you and say, hey, we want to be friends? Or how did those get created?
It was, I created opportunities to build a relationship. I created opportunities to spend time with them. I created excuses. Gee, I know you like tennis. Why don't you come to the tennis tournament? I got us some good seats. Whatever the interest is. You have a guest speaker coming to your church. Provide an opportunity to put them together with the guest speaker. Gives you an opportunity to reach out to them and get to know them better. So you have to create the opportunities. Friends don't just come up to you and say, hi, I want to be your friend. Never happened to me. And I can't remember ever going up to anybody else and saying, hey, I want to be your friend. We got to know each other, we became friends. And you got to invest in the time to make that happen. It's a good question.
Intentional friendery.
There you go.
Hey, Steve, I have an opportunity to play golf on the coast in a couple weeks. Do you play golf?
Oh, I would embarrass you to be on the course with you.
Red knows how well I play, so it'll be all right.
No, I lose a lot of golf balls here. No.
I'm just looking for an opportunity.
I'd be happy to get together with you, and you can take a look at all the
Amen.
my list of all golf balls I've lost in my lifetime. And it's a lot of them.
Great. Let's give it up for Steve. He's going to stay up here.
Thanks, guys.
And Lanier's going to come back up. And we're going to end our last time with a panel. I have some questions for these two. Kind of like, what was my line anyways, or one of those game shows. First of all, let's give it up for Hope Now for that awesome lunch, right? Boss, he's still here? Oh, this man, he's doing dishes. Our church is an art host. Is that what you call it? We're a site, right, Trevor? Anyways, we use that for Art Hop, and it's very well received. So if you're having an event for the community, it's a great way to start conversations with people. By the way, I stopped using that term, I'm a fundraiser, a long time ago. I tell people I'm a broker of opportunity. So works well. Think about that.
And then they'll say, what's that mean?
So you're lapelled up. You're not. So I'm going to ask a question, but we're going to get it for the video. So I'll hand you the mic. This is kind of, to know, like Steve, or I'm going to let you guys kind of decide it. So one of the questions I have is, in terms of notifications, best practice about notifications, meaning, is it good to ask donors to notify your nonprofit that you've left them in their will and estate? And with that, second part of that question is, what do you feel about these societies that, and these heritage clubs and those kinds of things, when nonprofits say, oh, you're in the Plague Giving Society or whatever, so they've told you? That makes sense?
I can give it a shot. It was my job on campus to bring all the people that we were aware of that were leaving a gift to the university. And once a year, we'd give them a little luncheon and praise them and bring students in front of them to see what great things gifts could do. But I can't think of a place where we ever reached out asking for people, have you left a gift to the university? Those usually came to us, and I came to find that there were many more people who left gifts to the university than ever shared that with us.
Any additional on that?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag. I mean, I think clients can be very private about all this and not want anybody to know anything because they may change it. And there's also a fear, right or wrong, there's a fear that
if I mention this gift, that I'm going to get much more requests and so forth. But that's why I think what Steve was saying about everything being relationship based and having those opportunities to make asks or for them to ask you, and then just maintaining that, to me, is so much smarter. But for common, ordinary, everyday gifts, we probably don't get notice out into the charities.
Hopefully some of these questions represent things you're thinking of. If not, you'll get to ask them at the end. There's a lot of pressure for nonprofit leaders to raise cash and meet budget a lot. And many of these nonprofit leaders also are the directors, and they lead boards, and they're program directors, and they're janitors, and they do it all. And really, play giving's kind of a long play. So you might not see a gift for 10, 15 years, 20 years. So how would you encourage nonprofit leaders to navigate that long game versus pressure to raise cash?
There you go. Good.
It's the challenge that every organization faces is you need money to operate, and you need to meet the budget next week and next month and next year. And you're so busy trying to do that, the idea of thinking about something down the road is off the plate. You don't have time to function with that. If you find the opportunity, you find somebody who has a passion that matches yours, invest the time to make that a lifelong relationship. I know many of the people who I talk to leave gifts to the university. I'm going to be long gone before those gifts ever come along. And whoever happens to be the plan giving director at that time will get patted on the back for doing a great job. I got patted on the back for doing a great job when gifts fell out of the sky that I wasn't aware of, because somebody years ago had planted the seed. Somebody years ago had done the work. So don't assume that when you plant the seed that nothing happened. You may not be around to see it happen, but you can't assume that it won't happen.
Hey, that help?
Yeah, great. Can I?
Yeah, please.
I think the other thing is when we have the opportunity to secure, are you finished? If you have the opportunity to secure the planned gift, there's always that relational opportunity as you're spending time with people that I've seen time and time again, that people start making that long-term planned gift now. They start doing some things now as a part of it because they've already slated it in their head to give it away later. And so we have that opportunity to sometimes bring that into the now and do it before they die instead of after they die.
I had a great conversation with a gentleman who I knew was leaving a multi-million-dollar gift to the university. And we sat down at lunch one day and I said, gee, have you considered maybe setting up the scholarship now instead of after you're gone? You know, wouldn't it be neat to meet some of the students that you're helping while you're alive? That was a whole new concept for him. So, I mean, yeah, there's ways to bring that back around.
Yeah, no, if you need to go on Sam.
Real quick, I'm trying to think, the Oracle of Omaha, what's the guy's?
Buffett?
Buffett. And it has a famous saying, do your giving while you're living so you're knowing where it's going. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Question back there, Dan?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just curious, in your work, what percentage of people even have a trust? And as we think about people that we know in our circles, does it depend socioeconomically, or is it just something in the general population? How many people even have a living trust?
Yeah, so for video, the question is how many people, what percentage of people even have a trust? Is a trust or a will something that's socioeconomical? Any thoughts on that?
Well, go ahead.
I think what I've read is you're probably only looking at about 35% of the population that has done the trust and done the planning. A lot of this is done, I'll just put my kids' names on the house. I'll just put their names on a bank account. And then the kid may predecease the parent. And we see a lot of that. And then what happens? So it just opens up too many avenues. So I think we have to find a way to guide people into that. I know that there's a lot of attorneys that will do it. It's kind of a wide range of the type of service and the type of fees that are out there. And we just have to kind of match people up where there's a good fit to get things done. But I think we need more, not less, people doing the planning. There's a lot not happening.
I would add that don't assume that the gifts that might benefit you, the estate gifts that might benefit your organization, are only those that are going to come from the wealthy people, the lawyers and the accountants. There were a lot of little $5,000 gifts that came in. Somebody just in their handwritten will said in $5,000 to X. Why not? Don't assume that you have to be, my examples all had multi-million-dollar donors, but I spent so much time with smaller possible donors. They didn't make the headlines, but they made a big difference.
One of the books I read years ago was called The Millionaire Next Door. I don't know if you remember that book. It's a great resource about sometimes we do think, oh, this person is wealth and this isn't, but many times my wife has an aunt that if you looked at her and the way that she charges us for stuff, you think that she's poor, and she's loaded. And she says Venmo bills, and I'm like, come on, Aunt Leslie, give me a break. So how do you guys feel about designated versus undesignated gifts as part of these conversations?
Yeah, that's really a good one. I think by and large, I tend to default to general gifts to the organization, that you have enough understanding with them, because you don't want any misunderstanding. You don't want to, if you're concerned, if you want it to go to an endowment, and if they have an endowment fund, and that will help sustain the organization going forward, name that endowment fund. If that's what you're, and frankly, that's what 10 Talents is for, is to be, if somebody does a donor advice fund or something like that, it can endow the family's giving, the plans that they want to do. But it just gets complicated if you start getting into, scholarships are kind of easy, but if you get it, I want it for this particular ministry, and then you pass away and that particular organization isn't doing that anymore, it just complicates things.
Got a great quick example. A gentleman I worked with for years wanted to leave money for the nursing program. His first wife was a nurse in Vietnam. She died from Agent Orange. He wanted to leave something to honor nurses. Nursing program at the university was a big deal. He came around to it and said, yep, I'm going to set this up. This is how I want it done. This scholarship was to be given to students who were low income, who would have their full ride would be waived at the end of the 4 years if they did 2 years of service in the military, for the veteran services, or for one other group. Was funded with a $3.6 million gift, an endowment gift to Fresno State. To date, university has given one scholarship because it's so hard to fit that. He was so precise, he wanted to do this. That money's just sitting there and it's never going to be used. The courts will not change it. That was his direction. That's the way it's going to be. It's just going to sit there not being used. So if they make the gift too complicated, too precise, too narrow, it could be a waste. And I had a great example to share with people as to why they didn't want to be that. Leave it to the organization. Give them the flexibility to use it where the need may change. That's what I encourage people to do.
Thank you. We're going to leave you with one more. Also want to mention with scholarships, there are some things with scholarships you have to be aware of. So if you do receive a large gift or a will in our state and there's scholarship involved there, do you want to start a scholarship? There's things like you've got to have a committee, you've got to have a policy. It is something that 10 Talents is set up to do. So we could actually set up a ministry fund or a donor advised fund and help you with that. We can do that for you. So just a quick little sidebar. So my last question in part would be for some of our nonprofit leaders who've never even touched this space. Look at you, Oscar. It is like, where do I start? I'm never going to have a plan giving officer. Where would be somebody for that's just brand new language? Where should they start?
You looking to me? I'm looking to you. Okay.
And but I think Brent probably has more of the answer, and I think the foundation can give more direction. I mean, it's like once a week I'm sending emails to Brent of this talk and that talk and all these little workshops and things. And so I think it's something you can kind of, we can get some guidance. And I think through the internet and all the resources that are out there, if you look at, there's a big Bank of America study that is updated every year. A lot of the big financial institutions like Fidelity Charitable, for instance, has all kinds of information, best practices, and things like that. There's a lot of stuff online. Brent, you probably know that space better than I do, but Charity Navigator, all kinds of things. You probably should speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. Steve, you want to comment?
Well, I'm just going to say the same thing. If you have the opportunity to tell a story about somebody who left a little gift that made a difference, people absorb that. If you don't have that example within your organization, look to an example outside of your organization where somebody who had nothing left everything and it became a lot. And you know, if you have the opportunity to point to someone who has done it, to share the story, how it was a success, how it made a difference, that could be the way to do it without having to stress over who do I ask, how do I ask them, what am I going to ask them for? Am I going to ask them for their retirement fund? Am I going to ask them for this? I mean, it doesn't matter. If you can start the conversation, it'll guide itself.
We are not waiting for, but we are in the middle of the largest transfer of wealth in the history of our country. Those are called liquidity events. It's a fancy word that you can use in a conversation. But liquidity events, I know it makes you feel smart, right? Is happening, meaning that there's a lot of properties and family farms and selling of things. And you know what? It's not going to you or their kids. It's going to the U.S. government. So I would say just have conversations with people, get to know them. Q&A for a few minutes.
I got a question. If we get a phone call and say we're getting a certain amount, is this where the son said this is what mom is going to give to Holden out? Should I ask for some type of paperwork? Say, can you please email me that? Or would it be appropriate to say something like that?
Do I need to repeat that question? Video? Yeah. So if you get a phone call, money's coming, somebody says my mom or some family member is giving your organization money, should you request some kind of documentation of that?
Well, I think you're suggesting somebody who's notifying you that they're going to be leaving a gift. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, it has already went through the legal process, and here is the amount. Like, what do I do in that? Do I just wait, or do I can I get them?
Are you saying mom's passed?
Yes.
Or
Mom's passed already. Yeah, I would ask who's handling the estate. Make a phone call to them.
And you're entitled to a copy of the trust as a beneficiary.
So you call the lawyer, ask him, gee, that's wonderful. Who has the will? Who are they working with? Can we get a copy of that? We need to have that for our records.
If mom hasn't passed away and it's more of an intention, then they're going to, if you ask for a copy of the trust, they're going to be more likely to be, that's private, that's our bit, because sometimes it's got special trust for special kids in there. They may not want the whole thing disclosed.
But
you're entitled. What's mom's?
Yeah, you could ask once you're notified that they're intending to leave a gift to you, Well, that's wonderful. But when you're gone, who should I talk to? Who? I'd love to meet your daughter. I'd love to meet your son.
Bring the family in. I would also say, just it's a good opportunity for you to just say, may I call the lawyer to verify that you have our correct mailing address? I mean, already at 10 Talents in our short little time as a foundation, I've 2 or 3 different occasions sent checks and had found out that address is not valid or changed, or 501c3 moved to a different situation. So just a good opportunity for it to do that. Did you have a question? You got a question.
Mostly to Steve, but anyone's welcome to answer. When you're hiring a fundraiser, how do you quantify the success in planned giving versus the time spent, since the gifts are coming in after you leave?
How do you quantify planned giving in fundraising the success? How do you quantify success?
Well, I can tell you why I retired early. For the first 10 years in this job, I had a boss that was willing to say, "You betcha, fly down to Los Angeles, take him to lunch. You betcha, invite him to the skybox at the next game. You betcha." They were willing to allow me to invest the time to do so. We got a new boss. It was all transactional. I left. It's not the way I operated. It was not a way to be successful in my mind. So, if you're looking to hire somebody for that kind of a position, be willing to allow them the non-transactional investment of time for the long term. It's hard to do when you're paying the bills and they're not bringing money in. It's a hard thing to do. I can tell you though, I got $28.6 million worth of commitments while I was working there for that 10 years. Will all of it come? Who knows?
Any final question before I think Brett and you're coming up to close? Any final question? I believe Lanier and Steve has nothing to do because he's retired. So Lanier's on the clock. So if you talk to him, so they'll stick around for a few minutes if you want to just ask some specific questions. Again, I know Brent's going to emphasize it, but one of the reasons we are doing these workshops, we are presenting this, is that we want to be available to you, have conversations with you. We're not expecting you all to become legal experts in this area. Well, we want to be as a resource so that even if it means going out with you to meet with someone and have conversations, or putting the right person with you, we're partners of you. So with that, thank you, Lanier and Steve, one more time.
Thank you, guys. There was one question, and I think it would be an encouragement to you. When you get into a conversation with someone, they're asking you about their will or their trust or whatever that is. There's many times where I've asked those people for permission. Would you give me permission to and allow me to go with you to that appointment with the attorney? I would not have been in Lanier's office for the many times that I have, and then being called by him to come in as a mediator for different things, that I wouldn't have been in that position if I didn't ask for permission. And I think the greatest learning opportunity for all of us, I remember my first time walking into that office, I was intimidated kind of by Lanier. He doesn't know that. But I was intimidated by that opportunity, by that time. But man, the things I learned in that meeting were phenomenal. And it so helped me to have that next conversation and be in the next CPA meeting or the next attorney meeting or whatever it is. But the knowledge base starts coming when you're sitting in meetings and just learning. You're there to support the relationship and the people that are there to solve the problem. So you're not there to be the attorney and know everything. You're there to build that knowledge base. I mean, that's probably why Steve got invited in many times, was just this relationship. It's like, hey, can I support you in going to that meeting? Oh yeah, absolutely. They're a little nervous about it too, So provide the support for these people, and that'll be a great learning curve and help you learn. I'll just say one last thing. Thank you for being a ministry partner. Thank you for partnering with us, investing in this, investing together with us, and for us to give you the opportunity to invest in you and learn more about how to utilize the foundation. There was one conversation I had with someone. I made a phone call to someone that was making $1,000 a year gift to our organization. and I called to thank them. And I started getting to know them. I spent some time with them. I ended up inviting to a trip with Convoy of Hope down into El Salvador, Nicaragua. I come back, and after a little bit of time, they tell me that they're retiring. We're getting ready to retire. And at that time, for most of us, we think, if you're moving into retirement, your income level is going to probably go down, and you're not going to have the ability to give like you did before. So I think there's a lot of times where we just kind of maybe say, okay, well, this relationship's kind of over. So as I move into that relationship, I hear they're retiring. I ask a few more questions. I said, so is it, as you get out of your company, are you thinking you're going to get everything you're going to want as you pull out in the way of maybe some bonuses or some other compensation or something like that? Her comment was this. She goes, Brett, this is the 4th time that I've been a part of a company that's been bought out. And I'm being bought out. They're buying us out of the company I'm in. And I asked one question. I said, when you started, how many employees did you have? She was a senior vice president of HR. Senior vice president of HR. 7th kind of top from the top. I said, how many employees did you have when you started? She goes, 60. I said, how many do you have now? She goes, 680 employees. I hired all of those. And so she says, but we're retiring and the company's about to sell, we think. And it's coming together, but it's looking like we're going to exit. And so didn't know what was going on. But I also have they're retiring back in my head. And so she says, so she calls me one day and she goes, Brent, just want to let you know I got everything that I wanted. And I said, awesome. So the company sell? She goes, yeah, it sold. And we got everything that we wanted. And then she goes, and I said, well, I wonder what that means, So I go to the papers. I didn't ask her any other questions. I just went to the papers because I knew what company. She told me for the first time what company she worked for. And so I go to the papers. The company sold for $14 billion. She had been there for about 6 years. Her payout was significant. I just got a video from Convoy of Hope about 2 weeks ago that she has since passed. But as of February of this year, they had already left Convoy of Hope in their trust as a part of their beneficiary. I had asked for that, but I had no idea what it was for. No idea. They didn't tell me the information. But I just got a video from a golf tournament. Someone was at a golf tournament, heard him speak, and said, Brent, it's your guy. He's speaking. And they included Convoy of Hope. They've made some adjustments before she had passed and left Convoy of Hope significant amount of money in their trust before she passed. And so we don't know what that is going to look like, but we have to have those conversations. And so I encourage you all, if there's any time where you want us to come and even come to a banquet or just say a little bit of something in a banquet or say something in a group of people where we have the ability to speak and to encourage people to consider their trust or their will, we would love to do that. And I think all for God's glory and for empowering the kingdom and the things that God's calling us to do. So I encourage you with that. Right now, I'd like to just say there's a link that you're going to be sent by Chanel for a survey. Just give us some feedback. We would love your feedback on this time together. And right now, I just want to say, Brent Deffenbacher, thank you and your team for hosting us, for allowing us to be here, for partnering with us and partnering with me through the years. We've now sent each other since probably 1995, and we've been in and out of ministry circles all our lives. And so, Brent, thank you for hosting us, and thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for joining us and being a part of this. We really appreciate it. And so if you would come up and pray your hand of blessing over us over this time and as we go.
All right, we join me in prayer. God, thank you so much for today, the time we've had together, the inspiration to be reminded of the fact, God, that this is all your stuff, and you just called us to steward what you've entrusted us with. And so would you enlarge the vision of what we have? And would you remind us that we're not alone, that we have other ministry partners like 10 Talents and others, even in this room, the kingdom difference that we could have just even shoulder to shoulder from this this meeting together today could have incredible impact. God, you are a wonder-working God, and you want to do immeasurably more than we could ever hope or imagine. So thank you for today, for resourcing us, for equipping us, giving us the tools necessary to accomplish the visions, even greater visions than we even thought we could have, God. We don't need to be afraid. We can walk by faith, and we can do it arm in arm with you and each other. It's your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Thank you all for you.